I've often heard people say that the day they got a cancer diagnosis was the worst day of their life. That wasn't the case for me. It wasn't that I was happy about it or anything. Rather, I was so shell-shocked and phased out that it really didn't get through to me. I went on for about a week like this, so overloaded by the new information that I basically short-circuited and was running on autopilot. I remember the day that the full truth really dawned on me, though. It happened unexpectedly and all at once. I was out walking my dog, still running on autopilot, when a brick wall of emotions collided with my brain. I was physically and emotionally thrown to the ground. I sat there for about an hour, getting a mixture of judgmental and sympathetic looks as I released all of the built-up emotions from the last week. Once I had let it all out, I stood up and continued with walking my dog. Most people in my situation would probably go through all the motions that normally occur with a serious diagnosis. Call their loved ones, make a bucket list, spend time with their family. Not me, though. I just did what I've always done. Shoved those feelings right back where they came from and continued to live my life as if nothing was wrong. As if I didn't have only 3 months left to live. You see, I was diagnosed with a very rare and very aggressive cancer. I had known for about 2 years that something was wrong with me. I was having all kinds of strange physical symptoms I had never experienced before. I was in and out of the doctor's offices constantly. Doctors, of course, did not seem to take my concerns seriously. By the time they did listen to me, it was already too late. They told me I had 3 months left to live, maybe a little longer if I went on chemo. I had seen my uncle go through chemo. I was not going to put myself through that just to live a few more agonizing months. So I declined. As I said before, I did not process this information as a normal person would. I didn't make plans to see my family or go skydiving. Instead, I chose to get lost in my favorite vice, social media. Before the diagnosis, I was constantly on my phone, completely absorbed by apps like Facebook and Instagram. I would scroll endlessly, desperately looking for something that I knew wasn't there. After the diagnosis, though, I found that social media was the only thing that gave me some kind of comfort. I would completely immerse myself in it, hours passing without me realizing, somehow oblivious to the time while I stared at the clock in my hand all day. The thing about apps like Facebook is that there is literally no end. So I would scroll day in and day out, fiendishly looking for that momentary dopamine fix that would temporarily numb the pain and take me away from my hellish situation. One day, as I was mindlessly scrolling, an ad caught my eye. Now, I have heard of Facebook ads that creepily seem to correlate exactly with something going on in your life, or something you had mentioned to a friend. I've had that happen myself on a few occasions, but this was a whole new level. The page that posted the ad was simply titled, Life. The ad read, Life, your trial is about to expire. Underneath was a counter with bold red numbers. The counter read, 2 months, 2 weeks, 5 days, 3 hours, 40 minutes, and 14 seconds. It took me a minute to process the significance of those numbers, but when I did, time seemed to stop. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. I could feel my hands getting clammy. It had been 12 days since my diagnosis. After staring dumbfounded at the screen for a few moments, my terror began to subside, and the rational part of my brain seemed to take over. Obviously, this is some kind of strange coincidence, I told myself. Even if it wasn't, what are the chances that the doctor had predicted my death down to the exact day? Even so, I decided to investigate the ad a little further. I clicked the link to go to the Life Facebook page. It just led me to a 404 error page. I pressed the back button and observed the ad a little closer. I realized in the bottom right-hand corner, where the sign-up link would usually be on a normal ad, was a link with "Save Yourself," written in red script. I hesitantly clicked the link. It redirected me to a new page. The first thing that I noticed was that this page had no URL. The second thing that stood out was the terrible design of the website itself. It looked like a teenager made it in the early 2000s. The word "life" was once again emblazoned at the top of the page in bold red letters. Beneath was the counter, displaying almost the same exact time, but the minute and second counters had ticked down. The only difference I noticed was that under the counter were two box links. One had a blue background with white font that said "Renew." The other sported a red background with black font that read "Cancel." I stared for a moment, trying to understand what was happening and pondering what my next move was. I shakily hovered my thumb above the "Renew" button, and before I could talk myself out of it, I clicked. I was taken to a new screen with a sky blue background and white text that read, "Thank you for renewing your life subscription. Your monthly fee will automatically be deducted." Below that was an accept button. I almost clicked it, but then I realized above it was a checkbox that read auto renewal. Most illogical people in this situation would have just exited out of the website, but I have always been a curious person. I checked auto renewal and hit accept. The tab immediately shut down, and when I went to look for the ad again, it was nowhere to be found. Disappointed, I went back to my regular scrolling. A few days later, I had one of my weekly doctor visits. I always thought these were kind of asinine. How many times do I need to go to a doctor to tell me that I'm dying? This visit, however, turned out to be quite different than I expected. Some called it a miracle, others an act of God. When I found out, I cried even more than I did for my diagnosis. The cancer was gone. Not regressed, not smaller. Completely gone. No one could explain it. I felt like a new man with a new lease on life as I left the cancer center that day for the last time. I was on top of the world. Untouchable. That is, until about a month later. Ironically, I got a phone call as I was walking my dog. The other driver was drunk. It was a head-on collision. My mother was gone before the debris even settled. My whole world was rocked and turned on its head. I live hundreds of miles from my mother, but I was closer to her than anyone else in my life. A few days before her funeral, I was sitting around going through my phone when I decided to check my email. I had a message from a name I didn't recognize called "Life is Great." I opened it and recognized the simple design and layout instantly. It said, "Your fee has been processed, and your subscription has been automatically renewed." Underneath was a single red button that read "Cancel." I realized the day I received the email was the same day as my mother's accident. My mother's funeral was beautiful. She was a very well-loved woman in her area, so it was very crowded. As the weeks passed, I slowly started to readjust to life without my mother in it. I decided to stay at my brother's house for a little while so we could comfort each other and help each other cope. One day, as I was showering, I heard a loud bang from downstairs. I quickly grabbed a towel and ran downstairs. I hesitantly craned my head around the corner to peer into the kitchen. What laid before me was too gruesome for my mind to process. Have you ever seen what a .44 Magnum can do to a person? What was left of my brother sat at the kitchen table. The only reason I was still able to recognize him was the tattoo on his hand that held the revolver. I emptied the contents of my stomach onto the living room floor. As I stood back up and began to catch my breath, my phone chimed. I instinctively went over and picked it up. I received another email from Life is Great. Your fee has been processed, and your subscription has been automatically renewed. My heart leapt into my throat. There was no denying what was happening anymore. I tapped the red cancel button. A new message popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel Life? You have 1 month, 0 days, 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds remaining if you cancel. Do you wish to continue?